Hi guys, I want to show you how to do this pretty watercolor mixed media flower tutorial, and it's going to be in real time so you get to see all the steps. Stay tuned. Hi guys, so I wanted to do some more watercolors today. I've been doing some pretty little watercolors. I'm going to show you, let me show you some of the ones that I've been working on. These are just fun little watercolors. Aren't they pretty? Cute little birds. We got, this fun little wildflower garden. These are all on cradled wood panel, by the way. I've been working on some roses. Now this is paper, but I mount them on a cradled wood panel. If you haven't seen how I do that, there is a whole process of, this is the panel, it's just like a cradled wood. There's a whole process, and then I finish this with this beautiful wax, this Dorland's wax. And I'm going to show you, actually I have a video, a live video I just did showing that process. And here we did this really pretty one. And we mounted that on the wood panel and then finished with the Dorland's wax. So all of these pieces are coming up in an auction in December on my Facebook. So if you can find me at Art Healing Hearts Auction, that's AHHA, on Facebook. And I will be, that's what I'll be letting these go for a very reasonable price, because reasonable sounds good to everyone these days. So I just wanted to go over some of the products. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of the products. One thing I'm just so pleased with this little watercolor set. This is Koi Watercolors. It's by Sakura Corporation. This is a pocket field sketch box. And I'm telling you, they're really rich and pigmented for the price. This was very inexpensive. It was under $50, maybe even under $40. I just remember it wasn't very much money. And I'm using the heck out of it, and I really love it. If you wanted something with a little bit of bling and you don't want to spend a fortune, I love these ARTEZA metallics. These are so pretty, and you can see I've used the heck out of these too. And this is also very inexpensive for what you get. These are really pretty high shimmer watercolor. And then if you have more of a budget, then we can go with like the Daniel Smith, something like that. These are really beautiful. These are fine professional watercolors. I actually pick these up at my local shop. There's an I've Been Framed. If you live in Portland, Oregon, this is like a fantastic place to go. An art supply center, and they sell used art supplies. So like I picked up this whole thing used, and I was able to try a whole lot of Daniel Smith, which I normally wouldn't be able to afford them. So it was just fantastic to pick those up. There's a color in here I particularly, this is not the best storage device, by the way, it's just what I had. But one of the colors I love in here is this Lunar Violet. It is absolutely gorgeous. I also love the Quinacridone Rose and the Undersea Green. Really pretty. So I'm going to pull those from here as well. Maybe this turquoise I'll grab too, just because you never know. And then the next thing you're going to need is, I like to use, well, in terms of paint, let's talk about that real quick. You'll just need a little palette. This one's obviously, well used. And I'm going to use some titanium white and probably some gold for some gold spatters. This is acrylic. This is acrylic ink, and this is acrylic paint. So there you go. this is a mixed media piece. It's not all watercolor, and I know for watercolor purists you may not approve, but this is why we do it like this on my channel. So this is what we're doing. What else? Paper. Oh, wait, one more thing. I may, and sometimes do, pull from a gouache set. What's gouache? It's like a combination of watercolor and acrylic. It's like that. It's like where the two marry. That's when you get gouache. Gouache is opaque if you continue to apply it. It has an opacity that most watercolors don't. You'd have to use a lot of watercolor to get it to be opaque. But they also really, really can be transparent with a lot of water. So that's where you get, this is an acrylic or ARTEZA 60 pack. I have to be honest, I haven't used a lot of these. I've used a few. So if I decide I need to pull from that, I can. And they're right there. Okay. Paper. Let's go paper. You know, it's expensive. This is like 15 sheets for 11 bucks, but it's on a block, which I really like. That means it is adhered at both sides. You can, you know, you don't have to mount it to keep it from curling with tape and stuff. So I do like these blocks. It doesn't curl. Now this is hot press and this is cold press. These are both 140 pounds, so the difference being just that this has a very smooth surface and this has more of a rough finish, and not that much of a rough finish, but also I want to say you can get this in different sizes by the Fluid Art watercolor people. And like this, Fluid is the name of the watercolor paper. And for example, I'm tearing this right now as I speak. This is the 4x8 size. I thought that would be really cute to have, if you could even put that in like a business envelope if you wanted to paint something on there. So I got that one at $7.30. And then, you know, there's big, this is like a 12x16. This was $26. So you see it comes in all different kinds of sizes. Personally right now, I'm sort of loving the hot press, and it's just because I have a little bit more control over it. It feels that way, or maybe it's an illusion, I'm not sure. Brushes. So, you know, I love the Princeton brushes, I do. This is the Neptune brush number 4. I also have this Princeton. This is an Aqua Elite. You can see its retail is $55.45. It has that beautiful tip at the end, and this was on sale for 30 bucks today, so I snagged that. This is a number 6, and these liner brushes, you just need a liner. I like this Princeton liner. It's a number 2, but you don't have to go spend a lot of money for what I'm doing. They actually threw this in today, this little Liquitex one, for free. I love that place. And then you need a little, this is an essential number 2 brush. I just like it. It has a very delicate little tip on it. An angled brush. This one is great. This one is by ARTEZA, number 2 angle brush, just for some of those flower petals if we decide to do flowers. And yeah, so these are just some of the things. You don't have to have all these brushes. You could have one brush. You could do this whole thing with one brush. You could do this whole thing with a really nice brush like this, because you have a fine tip and you have a big end, so, you know. And lastly, I like to use washi tape to basically edge this. And, you know, you can just buy this in a little pack of a bunch, basically. And I'm going to show you. Let me put this down first. This is not a necessity at all, but I do like this little setup, because then when you paint splatter, you can just pick it all up and it's very clean and it looks very nice, and you know, you can always use it, also use to kind of dab your brush off. Washi tape, you do not have to use the washi tape either. You can actually use whatever artist tape you have, but I like this little pretty little thin line. Actually, and this is what I had. I'm just going to be honest, but washi tape is kind of stretchy and I like that. So if I make a mistake, I can actually lift it up and reposition it, which is nice. It's adorable. So let's not forget, we like to look cool, right? And I'm gonna put this on all sides. This will just make a really pretty little clean border, basically. And I found as long as I don't use my fingernail or anything to put it down, it doesn't tend to tear the paper. Now maybe it's just this tape that I have. I'm not a watercolor expert, yo. I just do this for fun. This is, well, I mean, obviously I do it to make a living too, but not watercolor per se, but painting. And so that's a little washi tape I use. Okay. What are we gonna do? You need water. So I have my jug of water. I try to have two on hand. I have one clean water and one for rinsing the brush. So one water for gathering water, clean water, and then one for rinsing my brush when I get down to it. Okay, I'm back. So now that we're kind of all set up, I have my little water, I have my brushes. I've just been thinking about doing just a little layered design with some wildflowers. I saw a method from Polly Hill 1313, and she's on Instagram. And I decided to try out her little technique here. It's not really unique to her, this technique. I've seen a lot of artists use this. Watercolor only lends itself to, if you're a beginner, it only kind of lends itself to a certain amount of things that you can do, because you have to be pretty skilled to make some amazing details in watercolor. So I'm just a beginner, I'm just a novice, and so I'm just gonna begin at the beginning. It's the best I can do because it's where I'm at. So I'm gonna just put some of this yellow down, and then I like that peach, and that was my hope, is that these two colors were going to mix together and I would get some of this little peach color here and there. And that was the plan. Now I'm going to do something that we can never do in acrylic painting, but I'm going to put red and green together. Just going to put a little bit of yellow down there. And then I'm going to add some of this green down here. I'm sure you're like, this is not very specific. I know. I'm just going for looseness right now. Make sure that you have clean water that you're pulling from if you want clean fresh water, and you have another one, because it will go muddy and then you'll wonder why all of your paintings look muddy. You might think this just looks crazy, but I'm actually going for some browns down here. Trying to get red and, this is rose actually, but red and green make brown, we know that. So I'm just actually really going for a little bit of some little colors here, some little variations of colors. And you know, it's actually more interesting to the eye to have, rather than just pulling a brown straight from the palette, it can be more interesting to your eye to actually create that brown with two colors yourself. So that's what I did here. Kind of wish I had some more of this peach in here. So I'm going to try to create that by adding yellow. See if I can get a little bit more of that. And I'm thinking this might be a sky. And this is the ground. Okay. I'm going to dry this with a blow dryer and I'll be right back. So one thing about this is I want to provide some, I want to put some layers on here, and you're probably going to go, why is she doing that? But just hang with me for a second here. So the first thing I want to do is put some layers of this dark sap green. I'm using this Daniel Smith color right here. This is the Undersea Green. I just want to put some little spatters of that around here. Don't go too crazy, but we do want a few. Now, we're going to do layers and layers of things, so we're going to start with that. The second thing is, I'm thinking maybe a few of the red, the rose, the rose. I have to be kind of careful because these two colors again will make brown together, and I do plan on adding more water, so okay. And now I'm gonna get some fresh water. Actually, let me show you, let's see here. This is something you don't have to have, but boy, it comes in handy. It's this little fine mist sprayer. Let's use that. See how it just blooms? Just blooms those little colors. And then if you're like, oh, you know, you could be like, oh, I don't like that at all. You can always take a little towel, a little paper towel, or if there's a part that maybe isn't your favorite, you can just dab it up. And that also creates a little bit of interest, that pattern that's formed from dabbing. But this just adds another little layer of interest on the piece. Okay. Now I'm going to add the background flowers. I'm sorry, the background stems, the background grasses as it is, and I'm just pulling up basically some light colored brown here. I'm trying to make it a little bit of a little transparent. Things that are in the background, they're going to be lighter in color. This is a little darker than I had wanted, but it's okay. I mean, you know, this can be random as you want it to be, or it could be very calculated. But I do like the idea that we're just being a little bit random here. I am trying to follow a little bit of a path and keep this little part of the sky open. Okay. So now we have a bunch of these little, and maybe like off in the distance we have a bunch of little more. Of course, the ones in the distance are going to be shorter, right? And finer because they're far away. Basically, just to get the fineness of this, I'm just lifting my brush up really quickly, and I'm kind of feathering the paper, so I'm barely touching the paper with my brush. And that's how I'm getting these little distant looking, very light little, and obviously I'm using the same brush for the big ones, and I'll use the same brush for the bigger ones in the foreground as well. Okay, so now it looks like almost like we have like a little field, right? Okay, so for the ones in the front, I can use the same liner. This is a size 0 liner, but let's see. I just bought a new liner today. This is a size 4. Ooh, it's a big one, yeah. So let me make sure to rinse it off first. Okay, so the ones in the foreground are going to be a little darker. So I'm going to, instead of just adding like more black or more dark brown to this, I can just show you what I'm doing right here. Instead of just adding more, I'm going to actually add some green too. See how that just made it more rich and a little bit darker? I'm going to use that color now for the foreground. Maybe even a little bit more green. It's nice to have a little variations too. Like, it looks more realistic because that's just the way, you know, real fields are, real life, you know. Okay. Pull the light over here for you. Now we're going to do some of the foreground. Maybe for these, you want to be a little bit more deliberate. You want them to kind of all go in different directions. They need to cross each other, just like they would in real life. You wouldn't go out to a field and they're all standing in a single line, right? So. There's some right here in the front that are just peeking through. And we should do some long ones too, just so it kind of matches the ones in the distance. I'm actually going to add just a few of these green ones, transitioning into the distance here. I know it looks like a lot, and it is. This could be considered pretty busy, but because I try to keep the sky open, I'm hoping that that's going to counteract some of the busy parts. Okay. And now I'm going to take some of this green, brown green. I'm going to do some spatters. Seems like I'm getting them more in the sky right now than I want to. Okay. So the next thing is we're going to take some of this titanium white, and I'm just going to put that on a little palette here. My little palette, so I can show you. I'm going to mix some water in with it because it needs to be a little more fluid. And then I love all these little spatters, they're so pretty. And then you can turn your paper a little bit if they're kind of all going the same direction. You don't want that. You want it to look like they are everywhere. And these are going to help guide us to where our flowers will go. Okay. So now I'm going to use, I'll bring you in here a little bit so you can see. I decided I want a few more little shades of shadow and ground. Not a lot. I don't want to really mess this up really, but just like now here's the thing. I could be messing it up right now. I really don't know. Part of me feels like I am. Let me see. There we go. I just wanted a little more deepness, maybe variation in tone. A little more interest in the ground. So that added just maybe a little bit. Okay. So next things I'm going to do is I want to dry these little spatters. So I'm going to use the hairdryer and I'll be right back. Now I've pulled out my little angled brush. This is the number 2 angle from ARTEZA. And I'm just going to use the dots, little splatters on here, as the guidelines for the flowers. I think one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is this does not, it doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't want it to be perfect. You don't want all the flowers to go the same directions. You don't want you don't want them to all be facing the same way. I mean, the same formation. Sometimes they're going to be pointing towards the sky. We'll make one like that. Maybe it's just pointing towards the sky. And then sometimes they'll be painting towards the ground, like here. We'll make this one pointing towards the ground. Maybe this one will be pointing towards the ground as well. I think one of the things that kind of kept me from doing watercolor for a long time was that as a watercolor purist, they always want you to use the paper as the white. I do not have a brain that thinks like that. My brain, I literally can't do it, so it was really holding me back. And I will say that that was the thing that kind of, when I saw Polly using acrylics with her watercolor, it's not that I've never done that before or used mixed media before. I have. But you know how, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it's like I didn't really get math for a long time. I would take math classes or even reading music. Let's just use that one as an example. So forever, I just didn't understand. I could play the music because I could hear what the other kids were playing, but I couldn't read it. I didn't understand. And then it was like no matter how much my teacher tried to explain to me I just never could figure it out. And I couldn't do it and couldn't do it and couldn't do it. And then one day, I just got it. And I don't know what it was about seeing her little videos, but I just got it, you know. And so I painted a couple of little practice pieces and posted them, and then she got mad and blocked me, unfortunately, on Instagram. I just don't think we should be... she obviously learned some of the techniques that I see her using are techniques I've seen freely taught everywhere on YouTube and other places. So why are we not being generous with sharing? She learned her techniques from somewhere. I learned my techniques from watching other people. That's pretty much the way that artists learn, as we get influenced. And there's nothing new here about making little flowers, and watercolor florals are really common starting place. So anyway, all I can do is send her love and gratitude for for being my inspiration. And yeah, I hope this is inspiring to you. Okay, so now we have all these little flowers everywhere. And we could do a few more. I want to do a few little buds too, because they're so cute when you when you finish them off. So all I do for a bud is just paint just a little. You want to make sure they go all different directions. And then some smaller ones out here. One thing that's amazing is if you're used to using a lot of paint, this is fun to just have a technique where you're not having to use a ton of paint and you just get some really pretty results. I really want a flower to be right there. Need a little tiny bit more paint. And I do think it's important to give credit to someone when you feel inspired. We all deserve to have our, our efforts noted. So I absolutely give credit whenever I can. Okay, let me figure out how to do this. I really want a flower kind of hanging off of there, but I'm not sure how to do it. There we go. So we have that big one. Maybe we should make one more big flower. This would be a good place to do it for the eye, so I'm just going to enlarge this one right here. Okay, now I'm just going to try to make some tiny, tiny ones in the distance. And these are just really like the impressions of a flower. Okay, there we have it. The painting is not done yet though, because we're going to keep going. Okay, so now the next thing we're gonna do is I want to create a center. I'm gonna use this gold acrylic ink by Amsterdam. If you didn't have that and you wanted something else, a golden fluid looks great. In fact, maybe I'll just mix those two together for this little thing. And if you didn't have that, you could go with a yellow. You could just do whatever you want, actually. Whatever color in the center that you want, you could do. And I'm just going to pick one of these little detail brushes and just start randomly just popping a little color in the center. I actually don't want them to be perfectly round because that's not how they occur in nature. And some will be perfectly round because it's the shape. But like a conical shape is kind of appealing to me. Like the idea of them being a little conical, not comical, but conical. Okay. So now most of our little baby flowers have a kind of a center. And while I have this going on, I'm actually going to do a few little spatters as well of the gold because it's just pretty. And in this case, I think maybe a little bit, I'm going to switch brushes here because that one's really hard to spatter. Maybe a little gold spatters that go up into the sky would be really nice too. Oh yeah, this liner brush is way easier to to get some pretty spatters. I want to see, can you see this if I go closer? Can you see the fresh little green drops this is adding to the field? It's really cute. Oops. We don't want to cover up the flower with it though. You have to forgive my chair, makes a lot of noise when I move around. Okay, so if you see anything that you don't love, you can just pick it up with your okay. So now, to me, I think these flowers need to be anchored into the stem, so to speak. So I'm gonna grab some green and some brown again. Just some little greenish brown. And the first thing I'm going to do is make these little buds have a little attachment. And that brush is too big for me. Maybe these little buds have a different color stem because they're just starting out. We don't know. So, but we'll just let it tell its own story, right? Let's see, where are those other little buds? I know I put quite a few up here. There's one. Here's one right here. Okay, and now I'm going to add like the final little darkening part for each flower. I know these are not technical terms at all. But basically I'm just trying to darken up what would be the stem for the flowers so they look just more anchored into the ground. May not do this for every single one, but I think it'll look good for some of these, especially the ones that are right in the foreground. No, this is not, I'm just making little choices here and there. Here's a little bud that I missed. Sorry, guy. Okay, and this big guy. I want to make sure we put, oh no, it's hard to think of guys as flowers, but kind of want to make sure I put a very noticeable. Okay. It's looking pretty cute. Now, the very, very last thing I think I could do is to add just a little bit of detail here and there. This is just to add a little interest in the flowers to make them look more 3D. You know, we could sit here all day and do this little stuff. And this part's just like up to you. If this is even something you'd want to do, you absolutely wouldn't even have to, because I think this is really pretty as it is. But I do think it adds a little tiny bit of depth to the flowers, which I do like. And like I said, you don't have to do it to every one. Oops. Some of these little ones, I'm just going to put a little line suggesting a shadow. And then I just add some little details all throughout to make the flowers kind of pop. There's one more thing I want to do to this. Now this is totally not necessary, but I did add a little bit of metallic watercolor, and I decided to use a peachy copper color and kind of just do some little sparkles on there. And this is totally not necessary. This is just me wanting more. You know how I am. I'm just gonna tap it a little bit and get some of those pretty little sparkles. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you guys coming. I know this was a really long video. I don't do these videos very often, but I think it is fun to get to see a whole process from start to finish. If you wanted to paint right along with me, there's not very many materials, and you could always come back to this video and do that. Also, an hour and a half is not too long for a painting, and this one turns out, I just thought it turned out really pretty. And this is one of my favorite parts, is when you get to take off the washi tape. You can see it really didn't stick. And it leaves a nice clean border, for the most part, all the way around the painting. And I just love that. I love taking the tape off. It's one of my absolute favorite parts. You can see what I mean. So this painting and the other paintings that you've seen in this video will be in the Art Healing Hearts auction on Facebook. And that's December 1st through the 2nd. It's just one day only, so if you're interested in any of these, they will be mounted on cradlewood board and finished with the Dorland's wax. Isn't it pretty? Very shimmery. I'm gonna make these really reasonable. Look at all the fun details when you get close up, and there's lots of little shimmery bits in there too. I sure appreciate you guys coming, and I can't wait to do more of these tutorials. Let me know in the comments what you think. This might be too long for some of you, but I hope that you found enjoyment in the process and actually getting to see the whole thing from start to finish. Thanks so much, guys, and see you later. Don't forget to subscribe and hit all notifications so I can make more art videos just for you.